Legends of Tomorrow has been canceled. This is sad to me because I was a pretty big fan of this show, especially the last few years. And there are many reasons why I think this show was canceled. For a show that is based on time travel, based on history between past, present, and future of the CW, they didn't take enough advantage of the fact that they were in a big extended universe. You didn't see too much crossover or cameos from the Flash and Arrow cast. That would have been great to have it a little more inclusive, a little more connected. But I get it. The show became its own thing. I think they tried that more in the beginning. And honestly, the first season of Legends of Tomorrow sucked. And I think that's a big reason why it eventually stopped being as connected to the Arrowverse, is because season one did have those cameos, did have those story points that were connected to Green Arrow and Flash, and had a lot more appearances by these characters. But the problem was that when it gets down to it, the Flash and Arrow as shows were really good for the first two, maybe three seasons. And then the longer they went on, the longer that the writers just didn't know what the hell to do. They couldn't keep up with that tone and that way of storytelling, 20 some odd episodes every season. It just got too much. And Legends was trying to just be a carbon copy of that. Tonally, season one tried to be too serious, tried to have these stories to feel epic or to feel big scale, but because it's on CW, because it did not have the big budget that you would need to tell the type of stories that they were trying to do early on, it just came off as cheap. It just came off as low rent, and it was not fun to watch early on. I remember Rip Hunter being the leader of the team early on. And no offense to that actor, I thought that actor was good who played Rip Hunter, but he was written poorly. As a leader, he was terrible. He was constantly lying to the team, keeping secrets from them. He was doing things on his own. Also, thus doing things on his own, he was fucking everything up, always doing things to make matters worse or to make the plot go down a path that it did not really need to go down. And I welcomed when they got rid of his character. Sarah Lance became the leader after that, and that worked a lot. And it's weird how it worked so well because Sarah Lance on Arrow was a wild card, right? She was a character who I believe initially was just supposed to be in that pilot episode, and she was supposed to die on that boat with Oliver. And her character seemed to only be created as the wrench between Oliver and Laurel Lance, Sarah's sister. The fact that Oliver was in a relationship with Laurel and cheated on her with Sarah on this boat, and Sarah ended up getting killed over it. So it was more of a plot point device for that. And then somebody realized, wait, we could do something with this character and what backstory we can create with her. And luckily, they recasted her with Katie Lotz because she's great. She was great at playing the damaged, hardened, just angry assassin that was trained by the League of Shadows. Given her backstory, given her type of training, given how she was portrayed on Arrow, maybe on paper it didn't make sense to make her the leader, but because the actress is as good as she worked as the leader. She had seniority, she had faith from the fans to make this all work, and she did for multiple seasons. Now, I've seen some people complain that they were upset that the character of Sarah Lance was portrayed more silly on the Legends show, especially over time when the show got more goofy. So did Sarah. And I understand that. And I think even Katie Lotz, the actor, tweeted something about how she misses the more serious aspects of her character. And that I can agree with. Hawkman and Hawkgirl. Originally, I was happy to see these characters show up just because it was DC reaching into their lore, reaching into characters that I knew from the comic books and I wanted to see portrayed well in live action. But unfortunately, they didn't know what the hell to do with these characters. They were dumbed down. They had this horrible romance plot that was just the most uninteresting thing going on. Maybe it didn't help that the actors, I'm not going to say they were terrible, but I'm not so sure they could have salvaged what was supposed to be the most interesting characters who have been around for centuries, it seems. Vandal Savage was a huge villain to put for the first season, and he was written horrible. Again, a character that's been around forever. He's immortal, and he's supposed to be all-knowing and hard to beat, and I just found him to be so boring and so uninteresting. But season 2 and beyond, we got some better villains. The Legion of Doom, Reverse Flash, Damien Dark, and Malcolm Merlin were the best villains on this show, because not only were they comprised of villains taken from, once again, the other Arrowverse shows, but it was those actors that we already knew, their backstories were already established, and they're some of the biggest threats of the universe brought together to create this villain team. It made sense to have our team go up against another capable villain team. The problem was that it didn't last long enough. It was only for one season, and then they got rid of them. And honestly, we have not had villains on this show that have kept up and been able to match that level. Having characters such as Vixen, Nora Dark, and Ray Palmer leave the show hurt me as well, and I think hurt the show as well. These were characters, once again, introduced in the other Arrowverse shows, and these characters, these actors, were already likable, already endeared to the fan base, and especially with Nora and Ray. I don't know why the writers decided to get rid of them. I've seen multiple interviews with Brandon Routh talk about how he was not planning on leaving the show. He didn't ask to leave the show. He didn't really want to leave the show. All of a sudden, he just found out that, oh, hey, we're getting rid of your characters. What? And he felt insulted by that, especially because of just how abrupt it was. Maybe it was a pay thing. Maybe they figured, hey, these actors have been in this world for multiple years. We don't want to keep increasing their pay to keep them around. It's cheaper to bring in new actors and new characters to the team. And all right, fine, but that suffers. That suffers the team dynamic. That suffers the stories that you're able to tell, given the history that they have. There have been other characters that they had brought on to the team later, like Nate or Bahard or Zari. These are characters that I do enjoy quite a lot, and so they were great additions. I think they bounced well with the rest of the cast and the crew, and they all had different interesting backgrounds, and it brought a lot of diversity to the team. But if you're replacing characters like Vixen and Nora and Adam, and you're replacing them with characters like Spooner and Astra and Gary, who, no offense to them, they were okay, but I never found a huge connection to Spooner. You know, she was able to read minds, and she had some backstory with aliens abducting her. Okay, but other than that, you know, the actress tried to make it work, but I didn't really care. Same thing with Astra. I love the idea that she was the little girl from the Constantine show that was abducted, that was trapped in hell, somebody that Constantine was not able to save. She had a great backstory, but because she's on a sillier show, all of that darkness to her is gone. And she's just somebody who ended up being there, really just in the background. Gary, I found him amusing. I did, and I laughed a lot when he did certain things on screen, but it got to a point where it was a little too over the top, a little too silly, especially when they revealed that he was an alien, and it's his glasses that make him look human, and apparently he eats other humans, and it was just like, what? Constantine being brought into the show, played by Matt Ryan, who played the character in the NBC version of him, and it only lasted one season. and then CW just brought over his character. I loved this edition. I loved having Matt Ryan there. They did have demon aspects. It did have underworld aspects and the dark magic that came with Constantine. But after a while, you could tell that they didn't know what to do with Constantine, right? He's such a complex character. He's such a dark character that I just don't think he fit well with this show. As much as I liked having him there, it got to a point where it wasn't working anymore. Even Matt Ryan admitted that he didn't ultimately love to see Constantine be treated silly as much as he was. It was his idea actually to get rid of the character, and he stayed on to play another completely different character. Possibly the biggest complaint that you could really give this show is it's a TV show that's centered around fixing the timeline, right? Anytime something happens that's not supposed to happen, the legends are supposed to go to that time period and fix it and stop things from going off the rails. And that's pretty straightforward, makes sense. But there were so many instances where the legends would be the cause of the timeline dysfunction, or they would do something and they would kind of make things better, right? Even though they're in a time period where, yes, there was racism or sexism towards women and people weren't allowed to do things. Their job and their role is to keep things that way. And I know that it played more into the character's morality or what is truly right and wrong and what is best for history. And I wouldn't have minded if the whole point of the show was that, hey, maybe it does make more sense to change things for the better. Maybe it does make sense for, yeah, I know that, Hitler is supposed to kill all these people, but how about we just change it because we can and it makes the world better? If that ended up being the show, that would be great. But the show never truly addressed it, or they never truly said, hey, it's okay that you guys are doing this now. It just sort of became the norm. You never really watched The Flash and saw things be changed because of what the legends are doing. Have a moment where Barry Allen says, whoa, hey, the Holocaust never happened now. Holy crap, how did that happen? And you find out it's because of that. Now, that comes at the cost of having all these shows being loosely connected. And so if the Legends show did do something drastic, you didn't see how big of a deal it was on the other shows. And so it became a mess. It did. After a while, I enjoyed watching Legends for those last few seasons because you could easily watch it and not think too much about it, not sit there and get angry over things not making sense or storylines not panning out, because the show knew what it was. The writers knew that it was just there to have fun, just there to be silly and make you laugh or make you chuckle. And for the most part, it succeeded in doing so. And you had a few really good characters along the way. So ultimately, I am sad to see the show go. I did enjoy the show for what it was, but there was plenty of people that I would talk to who did not like the show, who did not like the silliness. And so it makes sense. Honestly, I'm surprised the show lasted as long as it did. So guys, let me know in the comments below, what do you think of Legends of Tomorrow? Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. Later.
Oh yeah. Today I feel Super Bowl. Feel it in your mind and you lose control. Feel it in your breast and you super soul. I don't say it a lot, but I know